Galina Olmsted joined the Minneapolis Institute of Art in January 2024 as Associate Curator of European Art. Her exhibitions in Minneapolis have included At the Moulin Rouge, Cassat on Paper, and Hokusai Monet, which is open now through August 10th. Prior to her arrival at the Minneapolis Institute of Art, she was a curator at the Sidney and Lois Eskenazi Museum of Art at Indiana University, where she organized a range of exhibitions, including The Art of the Character, highlights from the Glenn Close costume collection. She has also worked in curatorial departments at the National Gallery of Art, Washington, the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, and the Cleveland Museum of Art. A specialist in 19th and early 20th century European art, Galina recently contributed to the exhibition catalog Gustave Caillebotte, Painting Men, jointly organized by the Musée d'Orsay, the Getty, and the Art Institute of Chicago, where it will be on view this summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley, for your kind introduction and for the invitation to participate in today's symposium. To my knowledge, this is the first symposium organized that's been dedicated to the art and life of Blanche Hoschedé-Monet in the United States. So that's a real thrill to be here today. I'm also pleased to be back in Indiana. This is the site of my first encounter with this fascinating artist. Early in my tenure at the Eskenazi Museum of Art, I had the opportunity to visit Rick and Alice Johnson, along with David Brenneman, who was then the director here. So let me advance. How do I advance? Oh, there you go. I should have advanced already. This is the title of my talk. Hoschedé-Monet without Monet, Artistic Independence at Early, Mid, and Late Career. So back to the Johnsons. In addition to being wonderful friends of Indiana University, the Johnsons are formidable collectors of French painting, and their home teemed then, as it does now, with treasures, including this beautiful still life by Victoria de Bourg, which now hangs in the European Paintings galleries here at the Eskenazi Museum of Art. But the true revelation of that visit was, of course, these works by Hoschedé-Monet, remarkable paintings that epitomize the careful balance of her art in the 1880s and 1890s, working alongside Monet, but as her brother would later write, quote, not in the shadow of France's most famous painter. Already in these early works, we see Hoschedé-Monet developing a style that was recognizably her own, even as her artistic practice was shaped by her daily excursions with Monet. Take, for example, these two paintings from the spring of 1893, when Monet and Hoschedé-Monet set out to paint a grain stack just south of the shared family property in Giverny, where the older artist would later excavate the water lily ponds. Monet made 3 versions of this composition. The one here, we have one example here at right, with varying palettes and effects of light and atmosphere, but they render the same. Should I pick this up? Is it cutting out? I feel like it's a little low. Is it weird if I hold it? Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just feel like I'm.
Yes, I saw that too, and I didn't want to interrupt.
Thank you.
Is this a good level?
A little higher would be better.
Oh,
I've been gone less than a year. They forgot I was tall. Or I've been about a year. Memory is fleeting. It's fine. Let's get back to it. Okay. All 3 versions of this composition here on right render the same composition, a single grain stack near center, separated by the meadow from a row of trees that fills the horizon line. In Hoschedé-Monet's painting at left, and now part of the Johnsons' collection, we see that same grain stack from a side angle, positioned off-center to the left, with a row of trees now running diagonally on the right. While Monet fills the top quarter of his canvas with a horizontal band of blue sky and dense white clouds, Hoschedé-Monet crowds the left side of her composition with tall trees, reserving a square of clear blue sky in the top right corner. And her handling of the grain stack, the trees, and the meadow is similar to that of Monet, but she works up the sky as a whole, applying even color with short overlapping brushstrokes. These may seem like distinctions without a difference, but these shifts in composition and in her handling of the sky are evidence of Hoschedé-Monet's commitment to a personal style aligned with her own artistic interests and ambitions. As Philippe Piguet brilliantly describes in his essay for the exhibition catalog, Monet adopted the series as his guiding artistic principle in the 1890s, but Hoschedé-Monet preferred instead the sequence, la suite, producing variants that seize and center the motif rather than supplementing it to the effects of color and light. These paintings that they made side by side in Giverny over a period of 10 years are rich with opportunity for future research, particularly in the context of new scholarship on Monet's practice of painting side by side with other artists. That research is well underway at Indiana University, and I'm thrilled to be working with Julie Ribbetts, the Beverly and Gail W. Doster Painting Conservator here at the Eskenazi Museum of Art, on her extraordinary project in collaboration with colleagues at Newfields, the Art Institute of Chicago, and the North Carolina Museum of Art. Through a comprehensive technical study of paintings by Monet and Hoschedé-Monet, including scanning macro X-ray fluorescence, computed radiography, and infrared reflectography, our goal is to better understand the artist's shared and divergent methods and materials. Oops. Well, it's a preview. We look forward to sharing our findings, perhaps at the second symposium organized, dedicated to the art and life of Blanche Hoschedé-Monet. But for today's talk, I want to focus instead on moments of Hoschedé-Monet's independence, paintings made in Monet's absence. At various moments in early, mid, and late career, Hoschedé-Monet worked apart from Monet. And this afternoon, I want to explore a painting from each of these phases of her artistic life. My hope is that the questions raised about her ambition, her creativity, and her individual style are threads that we can untangle together in our conversations this afternoon. In the early weeks of 1888, Hoschedé-Monet made a handful of paintings of the Chemin du Vade in Giverny, very close to the shared family home. The artist was just 23 years old, but she had been working alongside Monet since she was 18, accompanying him on his daily painting excursions with their canvases and paints in a wheelbarrow. The previous spring, Monet had painted Blanche and her sister Suzanne in Giverny, an image I understand as an affirmation of his respect for her as a serious artist. In mid-January 1888, Monet left Giverny for Antibes, where he would remain until early May. Letters from Monet to Alice Hoschedé reveal that he understood this to be an important moment for Hoschedé-Monet, for her development as an artist, both as a period of artistic independence and as one of preparation for her first salon submission that spring. And this is an example of the kind of work Monet was doing when he's writing these letters from Antibes, a painting now in the collection at Boston. In a letter dated January 17th, just 4 days after his arrival in Antibes, he wrote, quote, "I hope that Blanche, left to her own devices, will make a serious effort, un grand effort." He writes back 3 days later, quote, "I am happy for the children that the snow has returned, but this will set Blanche back with her work, as submissions for the salon are due in the beginning of March." The next day he writes again, with instructions for Alice for how to secure paints for her daughter. Less than a week later, he writes once more, "You haven't mentioned Blanche. Did you order the paints and is she working?" These letters don't make a particularly strong case for independence, this flurry of quasi-paternal anxiety. But Monet does not seem to have pushed Hoschedé-Monet towards a particular motif or type of submission. In early March, he writes to Alice again, quote, "I'm not sure how to advise Blanche about the salon, as I'm not there to see what she's done. But if she's not afraid of rejection, and if she enjoys it, then she should go right ahead." No letters by or to Hoschedé-Monet survive from these early weeks of 1888, but we know from her paintings that the snow did not set back her work. It instead became her subject. Snowy Country Road, Le Val near Giverny, now in a private collection, is to my knowledge the only painting signed and dated 1888, and is the likeliest candidate for her salon submission that year. In her winter landscape, Hoschedé-Monet does not shy from the challenge of capturing the delicate nuances of freshly fallen snow. She balances bold white impasto with shadows of blue, gray, and green, injecting subtle warmth with touches of pink and yellow. The slope of the hill at right is especially lively and carefully worked, with layers of white, purple, and blue forming the shadows of the naked, shivering apple trees. On the left edge of the canvas, where branches swirl with shadows, we see that Alice did order the paints, and Hoschedé-Monet had all the colors she needed. The composition itself is not particularly innovative, but it's beautifully balanced, with the curving road that draws the eyes towards the blue hills beneath a wispy winter sky. In its subject, composition, and brushwork, this is recognizable as a Giverny painting made in the late 1880s, but it is not, in my view, a painting that would be easily mistaken for one by Monet. His most famous group of winter scenes, painted around 1867, may have been familiar to Hoschedé-Monet, as at least two remained with Monet in the 1880s, but they are worlds apart from her view of the Chemin du Vade some 20 years later, both in their handling and in their relative warmth. His more recent winter landscapes, such as Snow Effect at Le Metz, here at the right, painted in 1886, show what Hoschedé-Monet did take from the artist. There's that shared band of blue hills in the distance, and the sinuous branches that float, disconnected from their trunks. That's such a Monet thing. But comparison of the two paintings affirms that Hoschedé-Monet was committed to developing her own style of painting while Monet was in Antibes. His absence during this critical moment for the young artist allowed Hoschedé-Monet to venture out into the countryside around Giverny on her own and to make her earliest independent canvases. A related work from the same period, Snowy Landscape, Valley of the Seine, Normandy, acquired by the Musée Blanche Hoschedé-Monet last year, shows the same winding road from a different vantage point. In an unusual, quasi-square format and relatively small scale, Hoschedé-Monet is working through her ideas for palette and technique, dotting the snowy foreground with purple, pink, and just a few touches of blue. These winter landscapes from the early months of 1888 constitute the artist's first independent body of work. Hoschedé-Monet without Monet, preparing for her first salon. Ultimately and unfortunately, Hoschedé-Monet was not able to replicate the success of her mentor, whose first submissions to the salon were accepted in 1865 when Monet was just 25 years old. It was 1905 before Hoschedé-Monet was first able to publicly exhibit her work, a moment at mid-career when the artist found herself working on her own once more. After her marriage to Jean Monnet in 1897, Hoschedé-Monet moved to Rouen, where Jean took a job as a chemist, working for his uncle, Léon Monet. There, Hoschedé-Monet found new subjects for her painting. She made cityscapes from her windows, depicted her garden in all seasons, painted views of meadows and pine trees and nearby villages, and undertook an ambitious series of landscapes in the neighboring town of Croissy. She paints at least 4 versions of the Seine at Croissy, including one currently in a private collection here in Indiana. So the painting at the top left is the private collection picture. It's downstairs in the exhibition where it looks much better. I apologize for the quality of this image. And then going clockwise from top left, we have private collection, and unlocated, perhaps in one of your basements or attics. And you'll call me and Philippe right away if you have it. These paintings show the clear influence of Monet and the school of Impressionist painters at Giverny, but they resist characterization as mere imitations of Monet's style. The palette of blues and cool greens is typical for the artist at this moment, as is the careful attention to shifting colors at the horizon, where the hills and trees meet their reflections. Beyond the compositional changes, the four versions can be differentiated by their varying sizes and by the type and placement of the signatures. She exhibited one of the four versions as number 1948 at the Salon des Indépendants in Paris in 1905, her debut exhibition. The exact version that was shown is unknown, but it is most likely this version, now in a private collection, owing to the complexity of the composition and the clarity of light and atmosphere. Having left Giverny and the daily side-by-side painting practice with Monet that defined her work in the 1890s, Hoschedé-Monet found a new artistic community in Rouen, and her work began to take on characteristics of that school. She chose a view of the Seine that was favored by painters in Rouen in the late 19th and early 20th century. So we have Albert Lebourg, Temps de Pluie from 1901 at top, and Léon Jules Lemaître's painting of Croisset from 1888 there at the bottom. And I love that all three artists include that bateau omnibus. So this is like a ferry, this little boat here, that would take you to all the small villages along the Seine. And it must be a really particular characteristic or detail of this town because all three artists include it in their paintings, made over a period of 25 years. The Seine at Croisset shows Hoschedé-Monet at the height of mid-career, still visiting Giverny on weekends, but otherwise working independently and creating works that synthesize the strategies she learned alongside Monet with the local aesthetics of the Rouen school. Here at right is another example of Hoschedé-Monet's work from this period, which has clear resonances with the Croisset picture. She's moved slightly towards a warmer palette, but her interest in the blue-green reflections of hills and trees on the still water of the Seine is a driving force in her art from this period. It is no coincidence that this period of artistic productivity and independence corresponds with a commitment to the public exhibition of her paintings. Following her debut in 1905, she returns to the Salon des Indépendants in 1906 and 1907, and between 1907 and 1913, she exhibits regularly with the Société des Artistes Rouennais, sending substantial groups of 5 or 6 pictures to each exhibition. After a move to Beaumont-le-Roger in 1910, Hoschedé-Monet found new subjects for her paintings once more, venturing out into landscapes similar to those around Giverny, but crafting compositions that were entirely her own, adapting the bird's eye view that was popular among Rouen school's painters at the turn of the century. Just as Hoschedé-Monet was settling into her life as an independent artist working in the context of the Rouen school, the Hoschedé and Monet families were upended by loss. Soon after the death of Alice Hoschedé in 1911, Jean Monet suffered a stroke and his wife became his primary caregiver. In the spring of 1913, the couple moved back to Giverny where they lived together until Jean's death in 1914.